Hi, I'm Ricky Robertson, educator and author. I work with schools on implementing social, emotional, and behavioral supports for students, especially those impacted by adverse childhood experiences and trauma. In today's session, we're going to discuss educator well-being and resilience. I want to start by talking about a study conducted in 2017 to 2018 by the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence and the New Teachers Center. This study was one of the first of its kind to look at the social emotional well-being of educators. They surveyed 7,000 of us across the US, and they found that the most common emotions that teachers reported experiencing during the school day were frustrated, stressed, and overwhelmed. Chronic stress can impact our ability to perform our jobs, the decisions that we make, our ability to learn new things, the quality of our relationships both at work and at home. I don't know about you if you've ever, but at least for me, I've experienced sometimes what I'd call like a pressure cooker effect, where I make it through the workday, I keep a smile on my face, I do my best with the students that I work with, and then next thing you know, the school day's over and I explode on a loved one or somebody in traffic and they get the full brunt of my bad day. And that's a sign or a symptom of having to try to find ways to manage that chronic stress throughout the day without very many opportunities for us to catch our breath. That study conducted by Yale in 2017-2018 was pre-pandemic, and I think it's important to acknowledge that other studies have shown that the COVID-19 pandemic and the past couple years have really just turned up the heat in a field that was already incredibly stressful and difficult to work in, both for teachers as well as administrators and others who work within our schools and school districts. Chronic stress, compassion fatigue, and burnout can impact our ability to perform our jobs well, to adequately support our students, while also negatively impacting our own physical, mental, and emotional well-being. There's a study that I want to reference that really, in my opinion, connects our well-being as educators with our ability to support our students. In this study, researchers evaluated teachers for their levels of burnout, and then they got permission to take saliva samples from students during the school day. It's weird. But the point is that they evaluated those saliva samples for cortisol, for stress hormones. And what they found was that when students went into the classrooms of highly burnt out teachers, the level of cortisol in the students' bodies significantly increased. And over the course of the school year, students in the classrooms of highly burnt out teachers started to display more symptoms of anxiety and more challenging externalizing behaviors like disrespect, defiance, aggression, etc. And so what we see in this study is that stress in the classroom is contagious. In fact, it can become a self-reinforcing loop because now you have these students that are struggling more and more with anxiety and challenging behaviors in the classroom of a teacher who's already struggling just to barely get by and survive each day at work. And so it becomes even harder for that poor educator, and the loop continues round and round. Now, one of the things we can do to break and interrupt that cycle is look for ways to put our own oxygen mask on first. When we talk about supporting educator well-being, one of the first things we have to be able to do is identify signs and symptoms of burnout and compassion fatigue. Compassion fatigue, or exhaustion from caring, is often associated with when we start to bring the work home, when we care deeply about our students and perhaps they experience a traumatic event and then we experience that secondary or vicarious trauma and it weighs heavy on our hearts. We find ourselves excessively worrying about work, maybe even having dreams or experiencing anxiety related to work. And over time, we can start to become more irritable, more impatient. We can actually become less empathic. Let's say I have a colleague who's deep in compassion fatigue, and they come to me and they say, I can't teach with Johnny in my classroom. He's defiant, he's disrespectful. And I might say, well, you know, Johnny's dad was recently incarcerated, the family's facing eviction. And if that colleague is being honest with me, they might say, listen, I didn't ask for a guilt trip. I just told you I can't teach with that kid in my classroom. In other words, they're letting me know I'm at the limit of my compassion right now. I don't know how to support myself, the other students that I serve, and support this child. Compassion fatigue is related to, but different from burnout. The early warning signs include things like changes in diet, maybe skipping lunch because we're so busy, or overindulging in sugar or caffeine or things that give us some comfort but maybe in the long run aren't so healthy for us. Changes in our sleep and our exercise patterns, and changes in our socialization, changing or canceling plans with family or loved ones because we're too exhausted or too busy. But burnout can progress from there. It can significantly impact our emotions and the way we feel about our work environment, about our lives, and how we view the world around us. More severe symptoms of burnout are associated with depression, anxiety, and physical ailments like high blood pressure, migraines, gastrointestinal issues, etc. Now, something to keep in mind is that sometimes we have some stereotypes about burnout, about the burnt out teacher who's apathetic or who doesn't care about their job, etc. But these are in fact misperceptions. Evidence shows that for many of us, we can be both highly effective at our jobs and burnt out at the same time. In fact, in my opinion, it's actually harder for an educator who is highly effective at their job and feeling burnt out to intervene, to put up boundaries, to say that I need to do the next right thing and I need to let that be enough, because we put so much of ourselves into our work. The thing about being an educator is that the more you care, the harder this job is. So we're in fact more susceptible to compassion fatigue and burnout when we invest our body, mind, heart, and soul into the work that we do. Supporting our own well-being and resilience is essential, both for ourselves and also to support the work we do and the students that we serve. A dysregulated adult cannot teach dysregulated kids. No learning is going to take place. So one of the most important things that we can do is look for opportunities, even small opportunities during the school day, to care for ourselves, to alleviate stress in healthy ways. So whether that is mindfulness, prayer, meditation, stretching, watching cat videos on TikTok, listening to music, closing the door to your classroom, find those bite-sized practices during the school day that help you to alleviate stress, help you to self-regulate, so that you can in turn better support your students. One thing that I would like to say about self-care is that it is not self-improvement. Sometimes we think that self-care is about getting in enough steps or drinking enough water, or, if you ask me, I might even let my little inner perfectionist make my self-care plan. And so I'll tell you, I'm going to get up at 4 a.m. I'm going to meditate for half an hour. I'm going to do yoga. I'm going to do cardio. This whole list of things. And maybe I can maintain that for a few weeks. And then my life gets busy. Things get hectic. I start to then my self-care plan then becomes my self-criticism plan, because now I'm not living up to my own expectations. And so rather than looking at self-care as self-improvement, what I want to invite you to do is to think of self-care as having a relationship with yourself that is grounded in gentleness, humor, love, and respect. That it is both about having some strategies and practices that help you to soothe and alleviate stress, as well as thinking about ways to put up boundaries around work, to decide when the workday ends, to advocate for your needs in the workplace, to lean into positive relationships, and even be willing to have some tough conversations so that you can change some of the circumstances that are causing you stress and find ways to do your work that are more sustainable for you in the long term. Sadly, I've seen ways in which the topic of self-care has actually been weaponized against teachers. And so sitting down with an educator who is doing their best and who's at the end of their rope, and then asking about, well, are you getting your steps in? Are you drinking enough water? Are you getting your self-care in? Sometimes it can feel like genuine care, but other times it feels like shaming an educator, like, oh, not only are you not doing enough at work, but you're also on top of that failing at self-care. And so something we have to realize is that self-care is really about an orientation of kindness towards the self. Sometimes the most valuable act of self-care might be taking a nap, or might be saying, I can't do that today, or this is a more realistic timeline, or if you're going to ask me to do that, this is the support that I'm going to need. And that is why collective care becomes so critical, because as educators, we are often told what to do, rarely asked what we need. And I have found time and time again that when I work with schools and we attend to the needs of the educators, first. We then see a shift in student outcomes, oftentimes an improvement in academic, behavioral, and attendance outcomes because we've looked at the needs of the adults and we've addressed them appropriately, because in essence, we are the work. Student outcomes are more likely to change and improve when adult mindsets and behaviors change. And we're better able to grow professionally when we feel connected, valued, and supported in our work.
The Trauma-Informed Teaching Series is made possible by a partnership between the National Education Association and WETA. For more information, please visit adlit.org/trauma.